What you thinking about?
I was going to say, hey, Beast. Your response would be, hey, Belle. Or hey, Beauty, sorry.
So, our daughter's 3. She watches Disney movies. One of her favorites is Moana. She was introduced to Moana by a friend of ours, who we like very much, and was like, isn't Moana so great? She doesn't fall in love in the whole movie. And you weren't so pleased about that.
Yeah, I mean, before she made that comment, I was kind of tuning in with Moana here and there, waiting for love to happen.
Yeah.
Like waiting for that moment.
Because we've been conditioned by Disney movies to assume romance is happening at some point. But that's not the thing with Disney movies anymore. It's actually a trend. We haven't watched Frozen yet, but so we hear it's another movie where the princess never falls in love. I actually think there's no men in the movie or something like that.
It's about sister love.
Yeah, which is fine.
Which is a great topic too.
It's also a great topic. But it's very interesting because obviously there's this various cultural forces that influenced a movie like Moana to have no love interest, right? And we can look at the criticisms of past Disney movies where all the Disney princesses, like whether they're the main character like Cinderella or Belle, or a side character like Jasmine or Nala in Lion King, the woman doesn't really, her purpose has to involve a man, which I understand. On the one hand, this is not to just bash feminism. On the one hand, I can see how you want to show little girls something more than that, because our fiction is what models our reality when we're little kids. But then on the flip side of Moana not falling in love, maybe is not the best modeling for a young girl either. Seems driven by the same consumers forces that say everybody should be separate and women don't need men and just live your own life. Obviously, that's very unlikely to lead to happiness and fulfillment for adult women, let's say.
Well, mostly that it portrays that the value is found specifically in the expression of the masculine in women. There's just a simple absence of what is the feminine power, because the whole notion of female empowerment is actually just a beautiful word or phrase that portrays masculinity.
Still, I mean, we could go into Jung's concept of the animus in a moment, but it's like people don't know how to write stories where the animus or the masculine isn't still the driving force. You have Wonder Woman, where she follows the exact male hero's journey, acting like a man. And actually, we were chatting about this a little bit ago. It's like the Bechdel test, which I just told you about earlier. And for those who don't know, the Bechdel test is like this feminist, it was meant as a joke. It was written by a female comic book writer. I believe she was a lesbian, something Bechdel, I forget her first name. It was kind of a joke in that piece of fiction or movie or book is considered feminist if 3 things are true. There's more than one woman in the movie, the 2 women actually interact with each other, and they have a conversation on something that isn't about a man. And it seems like such like a hyperbolic, silly thing of like, okay, that must be an extreme movie, but actually almost no movies before recently passed the Bechdel test. And even Wonder Woman, which was celebrated as this great feminist, putting a woman as the hero, even Wonder Woman didn't pass the Bechdel test. Like, other than the beginning scenes where she's in the island of women, where obviously that part, the rest of the actual movie, Wonder Woman never talks to a woman about anything other than men, which even I, critical I am of feminism, I'm like, well, that's kind of messed up. Like, there should be better modeling for girls of like how to live your life separate from men. But the Moana thing of just act like a boy is also not exactly what we would want modeled for our daughter or what we think is healthy for women.
Yeah, and the child's mind is so fragile, no? It's like it just absorbs without really contemplating or thinking. It's only later that we can ask deeper questions. And so, yeah, what we receive is very influential.
And so we've been discussing Moana compared to Belle, because Moana basically goes through a male's hero's journey. And just for some context, like Joseph Campbell's Monomyth, what we typically call the hero's journey, is the psychodrama, the psychological playbook that can be portrayed in fiction that basically tells boys how to grow up and be men, right? It represents male adolescence, right? You leave your family, you leave what's comfortable, you seek out a mentor, you dig deep and connect to your gifts via the goddess, connecting with the feminine, dark night of the soul, dealing with adversity, road of trials, taking on challenges, defeating the bad guy, coming back a hero. Like that's the metaphorical psychological path of a boy becoming a man. You throw a woman into that, it's just a denial of femininity, and it doesn't embrace feminine power. So we've been talking about Beauty and the Beast because what's so cool, what's alternate to Beauty and the Beast is that Belle's role is she's basically the goddess. She goes through her version of a hero's journey, kind of. I mean, she leaves her home. She acts with a lot of bravery. She is a heroine. Like, she is brave and awesome and confident and cool. But unlike the heroes of male-oriented monomyths like The Lion King, Simba, whatever, Aladdin, she doesn't have any inner transformation because she's already perfect. Like, she's already mature. Like, she's already grown up. Whereas Beast, she's basically the anima or soul or goddess who imbues the beast to help him through his literal transformation in the movie from beast to prince. And that being, we've been discussing, that's the feminine power.
Through love.
Yeah, she heals him through love.
Yeah, the power of love. It's interesting because there is no, I mean, in my opinion, there is no life without love, right? And even if you were to strip that from all movies for children, there will still be that desire. Like, we all have crushes from an early age on. We all want to unite. You know, it's like, it's a primal thing.
It's how life is made.
The mating dance. It's interesting because I wonder, you know, while hearing you, I wonder, is it like this trust in love as a collective that has pushed for this? Or is it the imbalance that we're currently collectively experiencing where, you know, men are more disconnected from their masculinity, softer, and women are expressing themselves way more through the animus than collectively, and finding their value in what it is that they do and how they are viewed through their success and the things that they present and create rather than the intuitive power, no? Because when you look at Belle, a symbol, the one thing that makes her powerful or integrated in her femininity is that she never loses track of her intuition, the way that she guides her father, the way that she tunes in with the beast, right? Because she's very connected. And there's something about that, like the essence of feeling, the essence of trusting, the intuition, the heart, and the instinct that is portrayed in a very subtle, very slow way in this old movie. But none of that is truly present in Moana.
Yeah, because Belle actually, and this was a thing that maybe even honestly a little uncomfortable, was that Belle is so trusting. Like, so Belle doesn't fight the beast on behalf of her father. She takes her father's place as a prisoner, which she's so trusting that somehow things are going to work out. So I could see how someone, maybe a generation earlier, would be like, hey, that's not a good message for girls. Like, just trust and everything works out, and just like put yourself in these dangerous situations. That's how women get abused.
But it's out of love, again, no?
Yeah,
but
it's also the psychodrama. So what made me uncomfortable, and I chatted with you about this some time ago, and I'm going to make an episode on this, on the psychological themes in romance novels.
Right.
One of them being, I think forced proximity is one of the terms in the romance genre. Maybe, actually, it doesn't seem like you're into this kind of romance novel, but it's like there's a whole subgenre in romance of situations where the female protagonist is kind of trapped. Like, she's trapped or abducted or forced to spend time with some guy who seems like too crude or rough, or he's like a mobster, or he's a hitman or something. Like, something about him is beastly, and she's forced to spend time with him. And then she finds out he's actually a loving, nice guy. But
Stockholm syndrome.
Yeah, Stockholm syndrome type of thing. And you can look at, like, evolutionary reasons, like our caveman ancestors. If a woman's tribe was annihilated and she was abducted by the new barbarians, she better fall in love with him, right? Because that's the one who's taking care of her now, right? Her father's dead, her husband is dead, or whatever. Anyway, I'm going off track, but like Belle kind of like hits on that too. It's like she just throws herself into the captivity of a literal monster. But in these stories, in Beauty and the Beast, it turns out great. He turns out to be a prince. In these romance genres that I've been analyzing, it turns out that the guy who seems like a killer or seems like a brute actually turns like, it's like the theme there, the psychological theme is that she just trusts and things work out, as opposed to the male hero's journey where he can't just sit there and trust, like he has to fight something. Usually it's portrayed as an actual fight.
Right, but I think there's two things that need to be separated when it comes to fairy tale and romance novels, which are for adult women. Einstein said, if you want your children to be smart, make them read fairy tales. If you want them to be smarter, make them read more fairy tales. And it's simply because there's a portrayal of symbolism that we get to absorb in the unconscious, right? And so when I look at Belle and the Beast, for me, it's more than a love story. It's really the symbolism that can be externalized, right? A male and a female falling in love, and the love being the aspect that allows for transformation and union. But it's also something that internally happens. Like, we all have darkness or a beast from within, and it's through the love that we get to open up and find trust and resolution. And in other fairy tales that are a lot more dark, a lot more, hidden symbolism, we somehow receive messages that guide us through life. And I think that this is the misconception of we receive everything literal when we're kids, which is not true. Like, we can see it in our daughter. She's completely in a fantasy world most of the time and coming up with all kinds of stories. And when there's, the Dr. Seuss books, for example, like, there's so much magic in it that allow her to piece things together. It's just hurtful in a way if love and love stories and the power of love and the way that love can transform would completely be like not part of, because then the actual journey of what is love, how do I encounter, how do I connect with someone I fall in love with, then becomes a whole new terrain to explore without any guidance. And I think that this is where fairy tales, even like something like Red Riding Hood, like, there's such symbolism there. I mean, there's all kinds of interpretations of what Red Riding Hood means, but it has to do with her first bleed. Like, that's the interpretation that I connect with. And the intuition that is sparked through that, and the openness and the connection.
But can you speak to that? Because I've never actually thought about that. So, like, Red Riding Hood, it's her menstruation, and then what, like, the wolf is like, once a woman bleeds, like, the darkness in men come out to consume her. Is that what it means?
Possibly. Honestly, it's such a long time ago that I went into this. It was in the time that I was more involved in
fairy tales.
Well, no, in the production of my menstrual cups back in the day, and and I went really deep into all kinds of like interpretations of where the hidden messages had been in these stories to prepare a young girl for womanhood. And Red Riding Hood was one of the ones that really stood out. But yeah, in that story, it does show that she's connected to her feelings and instincts to navigate the situation and come out basically a hero.
Yeah, because even in Red Riding Hood, and there's different versions of it, she doesn't fight the wolf either. Somehow the hunter comes in. I actually don't even remember how it ends, but somehow a man comes in, right, and saves her.
And cuts open the wolf.
Yeah. So once again, it's not her taking the action like Moana fighting, whatever. It's like somehow trust and intuition and basically immaterialness. Like, it's not her material action. It's maybe her feeling or her magic or whatever that makes the story resolve, as opposed to literally picking up a sword and fighting the animal.
Yeah, which is what Wonder Woman would have done.
Yeah. Earlier we were speaking about how a Jungian analyst in the 90s, Maureen Murdoch, wrote the heroine's journey kind of as a counterpoint to Joseph Campbell's hero's journey. She agreed that it was a male psychodrama, it's male adolescence. But hers, as we were talking about, was basically the journey of rejecting feminism. And she wrote this in the 90s. She was a woman, obviously, a Jungian psychologist. And her journey was basically a woman is born into the feminine. She rejects the feminine due to a mother wound, enters the masculine, acts like a man, goes through some of the stages of the male's hero's journey, achieves some success, but then her dark night of the soul is recognizing that that's not who she is, and she's denying her power, and she's just acting like a man. The heroic side of her journey is reclaiming her femininity. And I mentioned to you how in the 90s, Maureen Murdoch shared this with Joseph Campbell because he was still alive, and he's like, no, women don't need to go on a journey because they are the destination of what a hero wants. And we got cut off, but I wanted to see what your thoughts were on that idea of what if a woman doesn't have to go on a journey. Because you were describing how what I just described as Murdoch's heroine's journey is kind of your journey back to your femininity, right?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely portrays my story, but I think it's a story that a lot of women nowadays would find recognition in, because we've all been conditioned to find our value through the masculine expression, to find respect in that way, to find recognition, all of the things that bring us value. Take a moment to really recognize, like, okay, where is, if you were to define, this is where I express myself in the masculine, this is where I express myself in the feminine, how do I find my value? the masculine aspects can actually be measured really clearly, whereas the feminine will always remain super abstract. And in a world where, I don't know, it's like, do you know of a woman who hasn't gone through her own heroine journey to connect back to her femininity, who just naturally expresses that? It's rare, and I think it's up to our generation to allow that path to be guided well for our daughters. Because when I think of like the nearby future where our daughter will be approaching her first menstruation, her body will be changing, in what way I can guide her in a way that my guidance wasn't there when I was transforming into my own womanhood. And this is one aspect where feminism has really disconnected women from their femininity, due to the pill and menstruation being something that, gets in the way, and, the wave that we go through in our cycle of a lot of energy, lack of energy, going outward, going inward, like this ebb and flow, moving through the seasons, like that is our power to recognize where am I within my body and how can I optimize my expression to stay connected to me while honoring all the feelings that come in that cycle. And if a young girl is able to stay connected in that way through that chaotic, confusing period of adolescence, to then reach maturity, what comes out of that, I can't wait to see. Because most women that I know, because like my heroine journey back into my femininity started when my menstrual cycle was all messed up and I was forced by my health and disruption of my hormonal balance to put my full focus there. And this is really what guided me into women's work and understanding everything that really makes a woman a woman. And when I think of all the women I've worked with and friends that I have and where I am now, even within writing my book about love, manifesting love, it's like, wow, the deconditioning that needs to happen to gently guide someone back to this place where it's the magnetism, it's the attraction, it's the seduction, it's the power of resting within the ability to be open as a woman, that we get to manifest everything that we wish. And not through the effort or forcing or needing to prove in order to receive what we think we're worthy of. It's the opposite. And so what it requires to get there is impressive. So when I think of like, okay, what is the type of fairy tale that needs to be created in order to guide the young girls of the new generation into understanding how to fully remain in the power of the feminine without excluding aspects of the animus, no? Because the animus was never meant to completely override what femininity is about. It was meant to subtly support the woman from within to feel secure and confident so that she can express her femininity. And I think that this is one of the things that you're contemplating in the black and white division between Beauty and the Beast and Moana, because both go into the extreme. And yet true feminine power, in my opinion, isn't the absence of the animus or the unconscious masculine within women, but it doesn't need to override. Like, you don't have to be this helpless, sort of innocent, like, oh yeah, I'm just going to lock myself in this castle with this beast.
Belle isn't helpless, though, right? You could say that her animus, she projects it onto the beast very early on in a way that maybe is hard to understand from a logical perspective.
But it's so subtle, and I think that that way of narrating a story is outdated because of all the changes that we're experiencing. You know what I mean? Like a new sort of fairy tale needs to be.
With Maureen Murdoch's version of the heroine's journey, it's based on a wound, right? Whereas the male hero's journey is like, it actually reminds me of a Camille Paglia quote that women have menstruation to show them that they're women, right? That's the initiation. Whereas boys have to go and do something. Like, a boy can't just sit there and he becomes a man. Like, he has to go on a journey. Even in Native
traditions, like, it's always been that way. Like, the women in the Native American, like, the women would go to the red tent, learn through the female elders, and the boys would go on a vision quest.
Yeah, but that's also why perhaps Joseph Campbell said women don't need to go on a journey. Like, their bodies do it. And you were actually saying earlier, from what you observed in, let's say, traditional Indian families in India, where they kind of protect the girl's femininity. So she never has the wound where she has to go on Murdoch's heroine's journey. This is probably not even true anymore nowadays.
I was going to say, yeah, because there's probably the argument from feminist perspective that the Indian woman is suppressed. But even if that isn't the case, I think there's so much influence from outside that the woman will feel as though there's something more that she needs to prove or achieve in order to feel whole or free. It's really a complex thing because I do feel like, well, women carry a lot of intelligence, a lot of capabilities, and so there's more to life than love, and yet it's the cutting off of this aspect of femininity that, I mean, I myself really feel like it's part of my mission to like reintroduce that and speak about it openly and reveal where the shadow is and how we as women get in our own way of finding the fulfillment that we want. And love is very much part of that. That's why I'm writing my book, because as much as women love to feel their respect and recognition in the success that they can achieve, most women I know who have that still complain about the absence of love, the wholeness that we can find through romance. And I honestly don't think there's anything more beautiful and more complex and challenging than being in love and like navigating life through that lens.
What do you think of the Campbell idea that women don't need to go on a journey unless they're wounded?
Well, it's interesting because it's a beautiful idea, right? Like, oh, through my own struggles and trials and tribulations, I get to now guide my daughter. Like it's honestly, it's like a wish come true to fulfill the aspects that I didn't receive when I was a little girl or when I was transforming into becoming a woman. And yet I can't, I'm not the only guide in her life. And the influence that she will receive through the world that we live in is still going to impact her. And when I think of the collective wound within the feminine, I wonder if any little girl is going to be unaffected by that. And so like the beautiful portrayal of like we are born whole. And by connecting to the power that we carry as women doesn't need, like there won't be the need to go on a hero's journey. Like that sounds brilliant. But I wonder.
All right, so you think it's just not applicable to any woman in
because
modern
no one
times?
is not wounded.
Do you think it's possible to raise young girls now to not be wounded, or you think the culture is just going to wound girls no matter
my understanding of life is also very much influenced by the shamanic tradition, and in the shamanic tradition, we are not separate from our ancestors. We're interconnected. And the way that we are influenced by the echoes of our ancestors, we will need to move through at some point in life, even if hypothetically we were adopted, for example, and have no idea what happened in our lineage. There's still going to be an aspect that is simply in our bones and in our blood. And so through looking through that lens, I feel like, well, it's a nice idea to think that we can create these perfect human beings, which I think as parents we always strive for. Like to do everything better than the way that we were raised. And yet to create the space that is required, especially for little girls, because there's something so powerful in the ability to expand and have the capacity to navigate the chaos and the overwhelm of feeling. And in the midst of that, be able to receive the intuitive insight and guidance from within. Like I feel like that is the power of the feminine. And so many women struggle with staying connected to their bodies, staying connected to what they feel. And even the women that I know, one of my best friends is here right now. She and I have that in common, know that we are very emotional. Us being connected to our emotions, we end up triggering other people who are so uncomfortable with that. And so that reflection of like, okay, what if I guide my daughter into, because she's super sensitive and she's super emotional, even more than I am, and to guide her in a way that she recognizes that is her power, that she can dive deep into the underworld, in the abstract of whatever is happening, and move through that through intuition. All of that is fantastic, and still there's aspects of the outer world that we don't control. And that will impact her and influence her and have her feel that regardless of the foundation that we build in our family, she'll have experiences of her own by people who are conditioned in different ways. Because I can't say that my parents necessarily raised me in a way like, oh, through success, you're going to find recognition and respect. But yet I grew up in a way that I got these influences from outside and unknowingly went into the path of feminism without ever really recognizing that I was a feminist, until the point came where I had no choice but to go inward.
Yeah. So it's basically like a collective mother wound, a Jungian would say.
Yeah.
Yeah. Actually, one interesting thing about Disney princesses is that they're almost all motherless. Have you noticed this? Even the ones who are not the main character, like Jasmine, her mother's dead. Cinderella obviously has an evil stepmother, no mother.
Fascinating.
Belle's mother is dead. She's not in the
What about Pocahontas? I loved her when I was small.
I don't remember.
I don't remember.
Her father's there. But a lot of these female heroine things, it's about the relationship of the heroine to her father, right?
Right.
In Mulan, she acts like a boy to save her father from having to go to the army.
I haven't seen that movie.
Okay, it's a great one. I like Mulan. She does fall in love, though, with one of the other soldiers. Ariel doesn't have a father, or she doesn't have a mother.
She doesn't have a mother?
Right, a lot of it is like her father trying to protect her, and she wants to go on land. You know, Beauty and the Beast, obviously, it's about her and her father. Even Moana is like, it's kind of implied her father wants to just stay back and be a princess.
And then there's Cinderella,
Yeah,
who's, I can't find the English word, who doesn't have parents. What do you call it?
as an orphan.
Orphan.
On the one hand, most stories have orphaned heroes because then they can grow up and like they don't have a parent that's oppressing them. It forces them to be the hero, right? If you don't have parents guiding you. But what I really thought was interesting is thinking about even Jasmine, who's not the main character of Aladdin, also doesn't have a mother. It's like she's lacking female guidance. Like she's disconnected from her lineage, which makes me think of, we were speaking about earlier, Jung said there's 4 ways a woman copes with her mother wound. The first is she becomes an overbearing mother herself. So like she turns into the witch, to use the fairy tale language. She controls her kids too much. She's mean to her husband. She becomes the evil stepmother, to use the Cinderella term. The second one is she becomes a homewrecker. She becomes hypersexual. She becomes kind of like the way I think people in the Tantra world, they call themselves witches or priestesses, like, like the sexual woman who her power is in her sex and she's not having a family, right? She's a priestess. She's not a mother. And Jung said this kind of woman tries to cope with her mother wound by sleeping with, basically ruining other people's relationships, right? That's her way of lashing out at her mother by basically breaking up couples. She always goes after married men. The third one is the woman who becomes an empty vessel. She's like what feminists try to warn about. This is a woman whose mother kind of annihilated her personality, so then she just becomes like the demure projection of whatever man she marries. Like she has no personality. And then the fourth one is the one that we're talking about, is she rejects her mother. She rejects femininity because she doesn't like her mother, and she acts like a man. And this is kind of Maureen Murdoch's heroine's journey. It's this fourth type of mother wound.
Yeah, that was me. But it had a lot to do with the discomfort of my own mother within herself and her femininity, her body, her ability to navigate her emotions. I mean, she's an incredible mother. We have an amazing relationship. But when I became a woman myself, I was interested in all the things that make a woman unique. And there was no way for me to connect with my mother in these aspects. Even the exploration or understanding of sexuality was completely rejected. And it made my journey very lonely because I was the first in my friend group as well. And to tread into that unknown territory alone without guidance is what I think hardens women, because you need to become your own guide. And this is the thing that is really interesting about what you say about these princesses in fairy tales that are motherless. Like, it's basically my story. It's really interesting. But yeah, I mean, I wonder, like in 10 years from now, we're going to see how I can influence that to be different. And of course, every mother idolizes to stay close with their girl as they grow older. And there's parts of me that fear her rejecting me completely, because it's also part of adolescence. Like, we have to reject aspects of our upbringing and the way that our parents raise us to find our own way. And I would love to be in a position where I can give her the right amount of freedom and trust for her to explore as she wishes and come back to me when she needs me.
Yeah. I guess also from a storytelling perspective, it would be hard for even the love interest woman to have a mother, because like if Jasmine's mother was around, Aladdin would have to kind of get the mother's permission, right? Or like Jasmine would be guided in her romance with Aladdin as opposed to going off on a carpet. So there's like this necessity of cutting off the parents for that to happen, for the princess.
So what is interesting, in my book, I actually talk about our love story as a modern version fairy tale.
I didn't consent to this. Change my name.
Yeah, because it is through the power of love that I managed to make my way to you during the pandemic, during the lockdown. And that journey for me was so difficult. Many times you know, because I repatriated from Peru to Holland. When I landed, we tried to figure out how to get myself into Thailand whilst all the borders were closed. And it was just a very uncertain time. And I had to keep the faith. You, who I'd never even kissed, and yet keep the faith that I felt within my body and my intuition and my instinct that revealed to me, like, yeah, this is my man. This is the father of my children. Like, I knew it. And yet I had to make my way over. People can doubt that it all had to do with the right amount of research to find where the doors would open. But in my experience, it had everything to do with the connection to love, the power of love. And many times I said to my friends and family and wrote in my diary that had it not been for love, I would never have made it. And so, like, that drive, that power that rises in the ability to make it somewhere, to go on that pilgrimage, and to find the strength beyond the exhaustion that I was experiencing or the stress of constantly bumping against another closed door because it was close to impossible. And the window that I found, only God knows how we even got this information. I got given some phone number of this guy in Amsterdam that was disconnected from the embassies, but somehow he knew more information about Thailand and how to get in than the embassies did. And we managed, and it was like a 2-week window. I just felt so guided, and it had everything to do with my connection to love and the power to love and the understanding that in many ways this had been my journey. Like, I had wanted to arrive in that place and unite with you.
So, yeah, it does actually follow the playbook where we've been talking about with Belle and even these romance novels of trusting, and somehow it works out.
Yeah, trusting. God, it was a very stressful time for me. But I do remember talking to certain people who simply projected their distrust, right? Not just in the ability for me to make it to Thailand, but the distrust in that this love would be different than some other infatuation either they or I had experienced previously. Whereas within myself, I could feel the difference, and I knew it wasn't an infatuation.
Do you feel like maybe that encapsulates the female psychodrama of trusting even when
I reckon
there's doubts?
From outside.
Yeah, or anything. Or like it doesn't make sense on paper, because it didn't really make sense on paper.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's what made it hard for me to navigate, because it did kind of feel again like there was no guidance. Yeah, I think there's a collective distrust in love. And I mean, the pandemic itself obviously stirred up a lot of distrust in general, like a lot of fear in regards to everything regarding life and threats. And there was such a separation happening, whether people believed in it or not, or whether it was a conspiracy or not. And that really portrayed something. And so for us to fall in love in the midst of all of that feels to me also very symbolic. And that's why I like to see it as like a fairy tale. And when I was pregnant with Kailani, I wrote a little fairy tale book about it, which I still have to do the drawings for it. But yeah, the story was basically that there was this invisible monster that had locked us in, and I drank a magical potion that made me invisible so that I could fly on the magic carpet all the way to Thailand. And
the monster being the pandemic.
Exactly. And I got locked in, which was the quarantine that I had to endure. And you, with your jiu-jitsu moves, came to rescue me from my prison.
Because I had a jiu-jitsu tournament the morning you got out of quarantine.
But I feel like, yeah, it is a good story. And it's not that I necessarily feel like, oh, we are special and we got to experience such an epic love story. I mean, I love that we have an epic love story. But I also feel like the story needs to be told, because I don't think it needs to be unique. And if there were fairy tales as such, or Disney movies as such, I wouldn't see it as an illusion of romance, but rather planting a spark of inspiration of what is possible within the realm of love. And the absence of that completely in the modern fairy tales and the modern Disney movies feels hurtful.
Hurtful to women or people.
Romance itself, love, the power of love. Because whether or not it is portrayed, we seek it.
And actually, one thing we would voice note a lot about during your difficult journey to get to me in Thailand was something that I read about how with, I think, Catholic miracles, the longer the person had a journey to whatever special fountain or
pilgrimage,
whatever, the longer the pilgrimage, the more difficult the pilgrimage, the bigger the miracle the pilgrim would experience when they reached the fountain of whatever. And there's been many documented cases of that. Obviously, you could say it's placebo, it is placebo, but the suffering is what made the miracle happen, or the suffering reinforced the belief that created the healing of the whatever physical ailment. Yeah. So he had to suffer to get to me. So it all worked out. I want to talk about the witches too, because so we have certain trends in culture, right? Women are masculinizing. That's one, let's say, manifestation of the mother wound. But then you also have what Jung called a homewrecker. Even in 1920, he called it a homewrecker. We might call this move, especially in spiritual communities of women, they're embracing their femininity, but sexualizing it. And the whole priestess thing is like, they're not trying to become a mother. They're trying to, basically have the power of sex forever. And the word witch often gets thrown around because there is a magic to sexuality in that you can make things happen and you can influence men and the world and stuff. I'm curious what you think about that from the wounding perspective and perhaps culture.
I think in many cases it's definitely based on a wound, because as powerful and beautiful as it may seem from the outside, I know a lot of tantrikas who are completely confused in that position, because there's an aspect to that portrayal and expression that brings them value, and yet the things that, in private, in vulnerable expression, they come out with is that there is that longing for deep security within a romantic partnership. And yet the identity of being the priestess prevents them from getting there. Mm-hmm. Whereas they think they have the stronger magic to manifest it, but the inability to really sink into the feminine is what makes them attract men who can't complement them in that way. There's like this contradiction, right? Because they're unable to really drop the animus, and therefore the only man that would step into that is a man who doesn't fully embody his masculinity, regardless of what he says or how he likes to show up. Because a real man wants, it's polarity. It's simple.
Yeah. And I think Mishka and I were talking about it when he was on the podcast. It's like a truly masculine man doesn't want to be with a woman who's stroking lingams all day.
Yeah, it's a good experience. It's probably a great way to get a lot of experience, but to commit to that woman, yeah. So there's a confusion there. And on top of the confusion is this layer saying, I am in my feminine. I am completely in my Shakti, whereas it's not. Yeah.
Because that stage is like they're stunted in adolescence, right? Because you're supposed to be sexual as puberty starts. But then if you follow the natural course of nature, you get pregnant in the first couple of years and then you enter motherhood. Whereas and I think not just in the spiritual tantrika world, but like our culture kind of has us want to stay in adolescence forever. You see this on the male side a lot too. And then with the women's side, you have things like OnlyFans and basically ways that a woman can make a lot of money being hypersexual, which of course probably limits her chances of partnership.
Yeah, it's only the woman who is willing to find empowerment and experience and wisdom through all of that and then simply drop it. I do know someone like that, and completely drop it all, fall in love, have a couple of babies and reconnect these aspects, no? Because not all of it is bad or should be judged, but there's archetypical aspects that cause for a lot of confusion. And like I said, it's the wording that prevents a woman from truly being able to see that within herself.
Which wording?
I am feminine.
Yeah.
This is how the feminine expresses herself. This is the path towards deeper connection to the feminine. And it isn't.
Yeah. Whereas Belle does kind of show the full spectrum.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Well, any other thoughts on Disney princesses? So actually, what I was trying to arrive at with you throughout the conversations we had before we started recording and now is, what is the best story structure? What is the fairy tale that's the healthiest for a girl that's not acting like a boy, not being a side character in a man's hero's journey? But actually, it seems like we're kind of landing on that's the more healthy thing. It's not that she's a side character, it's that she's contributing to the journey through the power of love.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to now look into it and see if there is a story where the mother is still present.
I guess it's a challenge. Yeah, I mean, I'm just thinking from a writing perspective, it's like a challenging thing to show the journey of a mother. Because even like the classic fairy tales, it's like they get married and live happily ever after. Like you don't see what happens during the marriage. It's assumed like that's the ending point. Like they get married, the princess gets pregnant, she has babies, and it's happily ever after. Like the story arc or transformation is complete, which is again a nice idea. It's kind of like the idea of like, what if the woman never gets wounded as a girl, and like she's always complete. So like she goes from being a girl to being the goddess, and poof, there's no need for
trials and tribulations.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, yeah, I want to look back into Pocahontas because I loved her, and I know she has the grandmother tree who she converses with, who gives her wisdom, and there is love in that story, but there's no actual parents, I don't think.
I think the father is in the story.
Yeah.
Yeah,
well,
again,
it's very shamanic, no? Like she's connected with the animals.
Yeah.
And they guide her, and the wind and the rain and the earth.
The colors of the wind.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I love that song.
Yeah, but I don't think there's a strong mother presence.
So here we are. I think I should write, my next book would be our love story, Once Upon a Time.
Okay.
There was.
It's already a kid's book you've written, right?
Yeah, why not?
Any other thoughts, Mrs. Meepagala, on female psychodramas, monomyths, love?
I love you.
I love you too.
And yeah, I mean, honestly, I feel like what will be a really interesting fairy tale is to portray the nuances of the polarity that happens within the relationship, no? Because it is most of the time about the achieving of it, like the navigating of what happens before the union, but it's the moment that the kiss happens or the moment that they get married that the story ends. Whereas when I look at our journey, I don't know how good of a movie this would be, but
Well, that's the thing. It's like if there's no downs, it's not a good story.
but we've had many downs, my friend.
I know, but it's like, John Gottman says, like a good relationship has high lows, right? And we've had some lows, but like I don't think we've had enough drama to make a good story.
True.
Like if I was like an alcoholic or something, then that would be a good story. Then we reconcile.
Right, but I do feel like it is in this journey and the difficulties and the challenges that we faced and learning how to navigate to make choices that have really allowed for a greater polarization.
Yeah.
And therefore a greater sense of empowerment.
Yeah, no, it's great. I just don't think it's a good story.
So maybe that's the problem.
You need bad stuff to happen. And actually, and this is maybe its own tangent, but if I think about everything we're discussing about the feminine and like the trials and tribulations are only necessary to heal a wound. If a woman doesn't have a mother wound, there's no external story. It's just all immaterial. Like you can't show it in a movie otherwise. So do you want to share about your book?
Well, in my book, Dare to Love, it's written for women, and I see, right now I'm writing chapter 6, and I see that the whole journey was necessary to like guide the reader into truly connecting with the feminine and reaching a place where there is a sense of security, like that stability from within to allow that sense of openness and trust that is required to attract love.